Meeting to order. Public notice.
Thank you. The official notice of the meeting was made by way of posting in the district office and on the district's website.
Excellent. Roll call.
Engler, Lemko.
Yes.
Bertel.
Here.
Shanefield.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Here. All right, consent agenda. We have a motion to accept. So move. Dennis, or excuse me, Doug. Second by Dennis. Vote by roll.
Lemko.
Yes.
Bertel.
Yes.
Shanefield.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes. All right, so before we go to resident participation, obviously, we're going to have a vote later this evening on the status of school. Actually, I forgot the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's do that, sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, before we go to resident participation, obviously we are going to have a vote tonight on the status of school. We do have a board member missing tonight, so we have an even number. Our bylaws state that in the event of a tie vote, the vote will fail because of a lack of majority. In that case, Mr. Engler, who's not here tonight, he is available tomorrow morning. We will re-vote on the exact same motion that failed tonight, again, in order to capture his vote. Okay? Excellent. All right, I now invite whoever,
You want the sheet? Thanks.
I would ask whoever signed up, we will limit you to 3 minutes so we can address the board. First on the list, Mike Nelson.
Hi, Mike Nelson, 424 Wiltshire Lane. First, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us the 2 weeks to kind of see what's going on, and I think it made a big difference.
Okay,
For that.
thank you.
I'm going to take I know the big thing is the vote you're going to have for what's going to go on next week or so forth. So I want to take a little left turn and talk a little bit about the masks, because that's coming up. The mandate ends on the 28th, and your next meeting's the 28th, so it's kind of like right there and there. So I want to kind of plant the seed. On the July meeting of the school board, someone mentioned on board that this will not be political decision. Okay, so if we're looking at the mask thing, there's two sides in my view. There's the data. Okay, look at the science, look at the data, look at the numbers, the scientific studies that have been there that says what masks do. I've read and I've heard that masks are ineffective and they're also unhealthy. I have not seen any data that supports that. It's just people saying stuff. Masks are unhealthy if you wear it all day long and then don't wash it, and then you're breathing in. So that, yes, they're unhealthy in that case there. But if anyone has any data that shows that they are ineffective and I've looked and that they're unhealthy, I'd like to learn that. I don't like wearing a mask, and if it's unhealthy and it's not effective, I will take the thing off. Right now, I'm just talking to you, I'm breathing heavy when I teach.
Yep. Just came off the football field, I understand.
I'm not happy about it, but the data says this is what we're supposed to be doing. So the other side to me is the politics, okay? It's against my rights, my freedoms, the Constitution. That, on my opinion, is the political side of the story.
Yep.
So if you're talking data, you're talking politics, it's not politics. Now, granted, there are respiratory problems, there are anxiety problems that you have to be aware of, not everyone. But as you go to this on the 28th, please take in mind that data and the politics side of how we should do the masks.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hancock.
Todd Hancock, 4835 Hartsey Road. Just want to say I appreciate all the efforts that are being put in by the administration to get our students back in school. You know, from what was stated at the July meeting, 80% of the parents surveyed want their children to receive in-person education. And at that same meeting, and do the one in August, I mean, there are options for those who don't feel comfortable. Our son thrives on in-person instruction. And based on the email from Dr. Francois last week, Waterford Union High School has some of the best public school teachers in the state. So why wouldn't I want my son to have that opportunity to receive in-person instruction? Additionally, I have seen a change in my son's attitude toward his schoolwork from last spring to these last 2 weeks. I'm not saying that there aren't any risk with having students return to in-person instruction. However, we live with risks every single day. Imagine if we were told daily the number of people who died in car and automobile accidents or by various other diseases. There would be a lot of people afraid to drive or to even leave their homes. To me, it also feels like we gloss over the flu season every single year, which has a greater impact to students than COVID-19. We also have heard next to nothing about the psychological impact of the isolation is having on students, not to mention the increase that is taking place in domestic violence. No matter where you work, there are safety protocols put in place, but there's never a guarantee that an accident would not still take place. I personally know and work with people that have had COVID-19, including one of my coworkers who was induced into a coma, hospitalized for a period of time. I'm happy to say that he is back to work, and everybody else that I've known with COVID is back to work. As most people know, my wife and I have compromised health conditions. I'll be honest, we choose to live by faith and not fear. I have trust that the school board will do what is in the best interest of the students and have them return to 5-day in-person instruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Marion. Did I say that right?
I really can't follow that. That was spot on. I don't have anything quite that prepared, but I totally agree with everything Todd said. My children also thrive 5-day in-person education. They also have definitely lost interest in just doing the work. They can't seem to get any traction on it. My question is, what's the threshold? Where's the threshold on, when you guys look at in-person, hybrid, or totally virtual, what's the threshold? What are you gonna say? 50%, 80%, you're working with the CDC in Western Racine County. So where's that point? It's a moving target, I think. But the school board needs to make a decision on what's the line. 80% of the parents surveyed said, and I'll just go back to that point, they said that they want their kids back to school in person. We do understand the risks, we get it. And it's not taken lightly, but we need to get our kids back into school in person all the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Call.
Brianna Call. I just wanted to address the board and then also the school side. I just wanted to say that my children need to be in school 5 days a week. They need the face-to-face instruction. This 2 days a week isn't cutting it, especially when you're trying to push the same amount of content that they would learn in 5 days into 2 days. Doesn't work that way. So I'm just saying that they need to be in school 5 days a week. The other thing to the school was that I brought this up with admin at all the districts several times about the masks and the mask breaks. We were told several times that there would be mask breaks, and there haven't been. So that's my question.
Why don't we address that when we get to the presentation?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Zach.
Good evening. I just want to thank the board for all the work they've done to prepare and help us get into a safe school year. And I wrote a letter to Dr. Francois and I asked him to share it with the board. I hope he did. I wish I could remember all the things I wrote. I just want to say I fully support going back to the 5-day in person, and some of the other comments about our son I can see he's 50-50 engaged. He's a smart kid, but this just isn't doing it for him. I'd like to see him put a lot more energy into school, and I feel like this isn't doing it. This is a senior year, and I want him to get off to college on the right foot, not kind of coasting through his senior year. The other comment is talking about the metric. It hasn't been shared with me what is the metric to safely return. I don't know if there is a number or if it's just being kind of made up as we go along, but this COVID's not going away. It's going to be here for 3 months, 6 months. If we're waiting for a vaccine, you may as well shut the school down right now, because I don't think we're going to have one anytime soon. So if we're going to just keep waiting for that magic number, it's not going to happen. I think this is going to be up and down and up and down. And I think we just have to have some courage and say we're going to put our best foot forward. We're going to 5 day a week in person. If things start to get out of control, we can always back off. We can do little pauses, but we're not going to know unless we try. So I say, let's try. That's all I have.
Thank you. This is Zach. Sharon, Zach? You want to talk?
I put her down.
Oh, all right.
He stole her thunder.
I know better than to not let my wife talk.
I was gonna say something briefly.
Sure.
I agree and glad that the board has put so much thought into this. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I heard there was a lot of fear regarding going back to school. I work in a hospital. I have worked with COVID patients. It's not all going. Many of them go back and don't have any issues now, as what Todd said. So I don't want everyone to be in that fear factor of this is such a terrible thing. So people get through it. So I hope that goes into your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I had for down on the list for resident participation. Oh, you didn't get, all right. State your name and, it's okay, address, name and address.
Lab and 207 Eagle Street in Rochester.
Okay.
I did send this email to Francois and a couple board members and a couple other people. Again, a lot of the sentiment here, it mirrors what I have to say, but one of the things that I put in there is that my son's a junior in high school, and he does have a very hard time being engaged by looking at a screen all day. I'll give you an example. He's not a great student. It's hard to say as a mom, but it's just been very difficult for him. I know his teachers worked hard to make it work for him in the spring, but it just was not good for him at all, a good fit for him at all. He's the kind of student that needs face-to-face contact with his teachers. He needs structure and face-to-face instruction for him to get the most out of his classes and the subject. For example, he had a virtual day today, but it was a little bit better. And as far as what the actions were, and what he did, because we had to address quite a few things. On Tuesday, when he had a virtual day, he got up late. He told me when we both work, so we can't be home to monitor him or to help him with these classes because he's not getting the same thing out of virtual classes as face-to-face instruction. It's just the kind of kid he is. Anyway, so he said he got up late, he checked his classes, he didn't have anything, so he didn't have to do anything, so he played video games most of the day. And the rule in our house is school days, regular school days, like, no video games. Well, to him, it's not a regular school day, versus virtual days. And so we had to set that straight, but, I see his point where nothing's normal, in regards to a virtual school day. And I feel helpless because I'm not sure exactly what he's supposed to be doing on a virtual day. He doesn't even have to check in like the spring, but I'm just not sure. And, I'm tired of getting upset with him because he's not doing any work that it seems like. He says he's checked classes, he doesn't have to do it. But, that's what he says he has to do is just check them. And if he doesn't have anything, he does what he sees that he has to do, and it's over in like very, very short period of time. Anyway, long story short, again, 80% of the parents wanted to have their kids back in school. I'm not sure what happened, or I'm just hoping and trust that the direction is to go 5 days a week at school. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Move on to action items. Mr. Francois, do you want to talk about kind of the status before we take action?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'd like to just give a thank you to staff and students and parents that have given us feedback through the form of surveys, have participated in our board meeting discussions, have come today to share personal testimonies of what their feelings are about reopening. And we do take every email that we receive. We may not be able to respond in full, but we do receive them, and we do forward those to the board when requested to do so. And in full transparency, they have everything that I've had been asked to forward, and there is before them for their consideration. So thank you for being a participant in this process, as it's unprecedented, and our team is working extremely hard around the clock, literally throughout the summer. There were very few days off that we weren't spent thinking or actually acting on plans to reopen schools. With that, you asked us to give you an evaluation 2 weeks ago of how the first few days went. I would say, if I were to just to generally categorize it, it went well. We had students that came back. They were eager to come back. They were eager to see their peers and in a social setting again. They're eager to interact with their teachers in a face-to-face setting. We did have, and we're prepared for PPE in classrooms. We had students and staff wearing masks and doing so with due diligence. We social distance wherever possible. In a high school setting, it's not possible to do every location with a 6-foot separation, and it's not possible to have every hallway with a one-way flow of traffic. But to the best of our ability, we expanded cafeterias in the lunch area to gymnasiums adjacent to give social distancing over lunch. We put up plexiglass partitions in our offices. We've taken some due diligence to put signage throughout the building to remind us to wash our hands, to social distance, to wear masks, those kinds of things. So overall, I think the sentiment is that it went well. Again, it's half of our population. There'll be another challenge when the full population comes. Everything that we've learned to date will be certainly pressed and stressed to figure out the new plan if and when all the students return. But with that, we do also monitor, and I'll just share with the board, an evaluation of the Racine County Health Department's latest data, the percent number of positives over this past 14-day moving average. It was 6% at that time. It remains 6% at this time. It stays relatively flat on a 2-week average. Personally, here at the high school, we have 0 active students or 0 active staff cases in this building. We do have less than 5 students or staff that are being quarantined. For full transparency, that quarantine means they've come in close contact, but they are not considered positive, and they are not a probable case at this point. But because they have been close contact, we are being proactive to quarantine them so that we don't have any infections here at school. With that, our administrative team has met as recently as this week to prepare for this meeting. And we have limited all of the options that we've considered really down to 2 recommendations for the board this evening. I've asked Mr. Foster to summarize those discussions and to give you the pros and cons of each one of those options. And then we'll ask the board to take action on a final recommendation. So, okay, Mr. Foster.
Sure. First off, thank you. First off, our goal has been to, we've been striving to balance a focus on student learning with prioritizing a less risk approach to education. And we are committed to student safety, success, and responsiveness. And that includes the staff and the well-being of our greater community as well. So keeping that in mind is our goal. Before I jump into the evaluation components that you asked us to look at, I did want to take a moment to address the 2 questions that were brought up. One regarding mask breaks. That was part of the initial proposal. We changed that after we realized we'd be cutting into educational time, which could go anywhere from 3 to 15 or 20 minutes. And that could be repetitive over the course of the day. So just to lock down a particular time during the day was a very difficult challenge. So what we did know is during the lunch period for that 30 minutes, students would be able to remove there. The other language that we put in to the final proposal back in August was that use of face coverings would be an expectation for students and employees during school hours. But under the direction of instructors, if a class is outside and appropriate physical spacing can occur, students may be allowed to remove face coverings temporarily. Now, keep in mind, we also put that in play, and that was about the same time that the governor's order took place. So that played into what we could and could not do also. So there are a couple of factors that resulted from back in July when we did say we were building in mask breaks. So just so that the folks are aware of that. The metrics threshold, as far as, folks, you're spot on. It is a moving target. There is no definitive answer. In our conversation with county multiple times, we can't really, like on a snow day or a cold day, we can set a threshold, right? We can say at 35 degrees below zero without a wind chill, we're going to shut her down. That's too long for kids to stand outside with exposure waiting for a bus, or if a bus breaks down, we can't get into that, or the buses flat out aren't starting. So therefore, we're not going to run school. So this is a little bit different because depending on where contacts take place or where the illnesses erupt, we don't know that. And so it's always a moving piece. If someone contracts on, let's say, a Saturday, they start showing symptoms, maybe it was their off day on Friday, given the hybrid environment, and the county may say, no, at this point, you don't need to shut down, or you don't need to do a contact trace, but there may be another time where they say, yes, we do need to carry out a contact trace. So there's no set threshold necessarily. It's a matter of circumstances or pathways, or how a person came to test positive, or how they came in contact. So that is all done individually. And that is, we operate under guidance of the county and the local health department, along with our cooperation with our district nurse. So I wish I could say that there was a hard, steadfast number that forces us to do what we do, but unfortunately there's just not, okay? And I wish there was a solid answer for that, but there isn't. Moving forward, we'll take a look now as a brief evaluation. The Board of Education did charge the administrative team with the duty of evaluating the hybrid model. After 7 days of instruction, there were 4 days in one cohort and 3 days in the other. Tomorrow will be the 4th day for the second cohort. Here are some of the pros and cons of the hybrid model. Then I'll follow that summary with pros and cons of moving to a full capacity in person. As Dr. Francois stated, we really came down to two options. One is either continuing in a hybrid approach or moving to an in-person approach. Those were really the most reasonable and feasible options for us. So when we take a look at the hybrid, quick summary on what it looks like. It's half capacity of students. We have upwards of 27 students in a class currently, and those are some of our larger classes that have larger classrooms. We have 5 days a week, and as a matter of fact, let me back up, that's typically our band and our music programs, where they have a class of 55 students. So that's where we're hitting those numbers. We're running 5 days a week, half the students on alternating days, split by alphabet. We have been running the 8-drop-2 schedule, and currently, instead of a 4-day rotation, we've been running at an 8-day rotation. And I'll talk about some of the cons of that and the pros. So some of the pros in the hybrid, social distancing recommendations are attainable in many locations throughout the building. We've been able to accommodate that in many places. Our lunch hours are running at about 40 to 50% capacity in the commons and also in the Center Street gym. We've been able to contain it in those two areas. We have been able to extend that hybrid schedule, which allows more time to gather data from the Central Racine County Health Department to see, okay, are we going to see a rise? Are we seeing falls? What are we seeing? So it gives a little bit more time to operate there. The model is one that the staff demonstrated most comfort with in August. So we could at least get back in the swing and at least know what we were dealing with. Because up at that point, we didn't necessarily have to know if anybody in our community was impacted or positive testing or whatnot. So it gave us a chance to gather some of that information as well and give our staff comfort. They gave us the opportunity to educate and practice proper measures in the building, from the disinfecting to the locker usage, the face coverings, alternate routes during passing periods, our lunch periods. So it gave us a chance to step with a toe in the water so we can make adjustments and shift as needed. So those are some of the pros of the hybrid. Some of the cons is it was a decrease with the in-person instruction minutes, right? You're now doing half the amount of time. It also created a potential for a 1-week gap between cohort student meetings with the 8-drop schedule. So a teacher could have seen a student last week, Thursday, and then they don't see him again until Wednesday the following week. So that created some gaps. It was a challenge in planning these duplicated quality lessons, because now you're teaching students A through K a lesson on Tuesday, and now you're teaching L through Z, the exact same lesson on Wednesday. So it makes it a challenge in keeping that same quality lesson. Also, that created confusion with the schedule using those repeat days. As I mentioned before, it did take us from a 4-day rotation and slowed that pacing down of curriculum and learning by doubling it into an 8-day rotation. And it did increase the workload on staff to maintain 2 learning environments simultaneously. That first week, the first week of instruction after the first 2 days, we said, look, you need to just go through rules, regs, expectations. And we said, let's emphasize in every class what the expectation is for students in the classroom and what our expectations are. And that carried over 2 days. So we know last week there was no really virtual platform at all. Teachers started to open up the virtual platform this week with classes. Some of that may be, as we said and we defined, was virtual. They may be working on labs, reading, writing, other assignments. It may not be synchronous learning. Some teachers have implemented some synchronous learning where they wanted the students to log in and view the class and the demonstrations simultaneously. So we kept that liberty because we didn't know what we were getting into. So that's a little bit of a summary of the hybrid. So now what I said I would do is I would get into the in-person. What we would have is just under a 1,000 student population after our JEDI students have gone with online. That would be all of our students at full capacity then, 5 days a week, following the 8-drop-2 schedule. Some pros, it's a preferred delivery model for staff, students, and parents because it is the cleanest for delivering instruction. We get the most, and you've heard the testimonies tonight of parents saying that their children just learn better in that all in person. It does protect those instructional minutes. It's desired by students and parents from the recent surveys that we sent out, and again through testimony in the last couple of meetings. There's definitely a consistency of a regular schedule that now you're not worried about, is it A through K, am I an L through Z, what are we doing? It maintains pacing for curriculum and learning targets, so it doesn't slow that pace down. And it also helps us for not lumping on too much when a student's learning virtually and then they don't have access to the resources to get the support they may need. It also allows for a fluid transition for students participating in athletics and activities and other school-sponsored events. So if we are all in person, it helps reduce some of the transportation issues and some of the other superfluous elements that come into play. Some of the cons to an all students in full capacity. Social distancing will be challenged in classrooms, hallways, lunches, no doubt about it. We will not be able to maintain that pretty much throughout the building, given the day. The first week of school and Labor Day, that data has not been factored into the Central Racine County Health Department's information yet, so we don't know what's happening at the greater community as of a week ago events. We have a shortened time to solidify the return to school practices with full student body to include lunches and study halls. So we're gonna have a limited time to jump in that. We are ready to pivot, but our facilities are limited to be able to accommodate some of these things such as lunches and study halls and give kids some sense of space, even though it will not be a 6-foot social distance. Some families and staff will have elementary students at home while high school students attend. If we go full in, we know that the graded school district, one of our larger feeder schools, they are going to be going in a hybrid for the next 2 weeks, minimally. We also know that some of the other K-8 school districts, some are full in person. And so, it may align better there. So it will not be in sync with all of our feeders. The other piece would be that our lunch hours will run between a 50 and 100% capacity in the commons, 2 gyms, and the LGI. We're gonna have to shift around. So currently we're sitting 75 students in the Center Street gym. We have them sit at half the tables for one lunch, and then they flip to the even numbers for the second lunch. So we use 75. Once we go to full in person, we'll have 150 students in there. We just bumped it up today to roughly a 200 student capacity in the commons. And then we will also have to extend into what most people know as the old gym, where students will be sitting in the bleachers. And we're also going to add more tables into the commons, and we'll probably have to add some tables into the gymnasium as well. So we've got some things that we need to work around, and that also includes cleaning, pickup, setting up and doing all these other things, just trying to find the people and the personnel to do that. So those are a couple of the cons or the struggles that we'll face if we go back to full in person. So as Dr. Francois already mentioned, we met as an administrative team, we discussed multiple options, we narrowed it down to those two. We did reach that agreement that those two options, either the hybrid half capacity or the in-person full capacity, would be the most reasonable approaches to education at Waterford Union High School that reaches that goal of balance given the current health information that we have. Additionally, no matter what is decided, we do recommend that we continue some of these safety measures, whether it's face coverings, disinfecting, and then just some of the other measures that allow us to reduce risk for students, staff, and the greater community, because we would not be able to socially distance if we move back to an all in person, because our staff is going to be, falling under the numbers, some of the more vulnerable people within this building on a given day. Probably the last piece that I ask you to consider is if you do shift to a full in-person, please consider that move on either September 14th, September 24th, or October 6th. And the reason why I make that request is that would create a clean transition from our current model. So that way tomorrow ends a day 4 on our rotation. If we start up on the 14th, that would start us on the day 1 rotation with everybody back in. If we start on the 24th, that would be a day 1 with everyone back in. Or if we start October 6th, that would be everyone day 1 back in. Any other shift on any other date would then put us in the middle of a rotation. And then now we're playing catch up and shifting, and it's a chess game. So that is a summary. That's the summary that I have for you based on what we've experienced in the hybrid model and what we would face if we went all in person based on what we've learned in the last 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Francois and Mr. Foster, for that update. At this time, I will entertain a motion for discussion.
I would like to make a motion that we go back to 5 days a week starting September 14th, and that we have face mask until further notice.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Doug and Dennis, any discussion or questions?
There's no easy way of doing this.
This is true.
It's not going to go away. The only thing I'd like to do is ask the administration if they could look into getting webpads or something where we could have synchronous teaching, looking at the costs, and in case we do have a big break or big problem, that kids can still learn better than hybrid.
We'll just look at it. Can we have that as an information item at the next meeting? Sure.
It's not easy, but
Yeah. No, thank
it's
you.
something I think we need to be prepared for.
Any other points of discussion? Doug? Lindsay? All right. With no more discussion, let's proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item for action is increase of custodial staff.
We currently have, as you can see, 149 classroom and spaces throughout the building, 81 teachers, 1,049 students, 288,000 square feet of space, and we are in the middle of a pandemic. We have currently part-time custodians that desire to be full-time, and I would like to recommend to the board that until further notice, we would increase 2 of those part-time custodians to full-time custodial staff to help to meet the demands and needs that we're seeing across this building. Would be greatly appreciated and help, in that help would certainly relieve a lot of stress and anxiety from our custodial team that's doing the best they can given the circumstances. So I recommend approval.
I would make a motion to.
I'll second it.
Nancy and Doug, all those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Before we adjourn, I just want to personally thank all the parents who attended the meetings tonight, and those who attended online. And to thank you for all the correspondences I've received, and the other board members, and your support of your students and the administration here. It's not an easy task right now. None of us signed up for this, I don't think.
And, but I will tell you, I have the utmost confidence in this administration and our staff to do the right things and to pull this off and how they're going about it. Tremendous professionals that we get to work with, and I know it's not an easy job, but you make our jobs as easy as they can be. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I'd like to thank our administration for all the work that you've done.
Thank you, Nancy. Excellent. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Doug, Nancy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.